Welcome, everyone. My name is Tony Infanti, and I'm the Vice Chair for Pro Bono and Outreach of the ABA Tax Section. And I'd like to welcome all of you to this webinar about our Christine Brunswick Fellowship Program to provide some information to host organizations that might be interested in having one of our fellows. And we have a great group of speakers for you here today. And I'm going to kind of go in reverse order of what they'll be speaking in. So we'll end up with the folks who will be starting out talking to you. We have Terry Morris and Nancy Rossner here, who are going to be speaking from the perspective of someone who's hosted a fellow before and someone who's been a fellow. Ty Hansen from the ABA Tax Section is going to be talking about kind of administrative aspects of it. And to start us off, we have Meg Newman and Susan Morgenstern, who are going to be giving an introduction to the program. So I will hand it off to Meg to kick things off.
Excellent. Well, welcome, and I'm so glad to see you all here today. Sorry, I'm playing with gallery versus speaker view here. Here we go. I'm so heartened to see so many people here today. I'm going to talk a little bit about an overview on the fellowship program, and then Susan Morgenstern, I'm hoping, is going to jump in here with some suggestions and tips as well. So as you may know, the fellowship was created in 2008, and the goal was to provide an opportunity for lawyers who are new to their career, or and you know, we don't define that very rigidly, but generally lawyers who are coming out of law school or coming out of an LLM program. Maybe they've done a tax court clerkship, maybe they've worked in private practice for a couple of years and decided they wanted to switch over to doing something different. Those types of lawyers, there aren't a ton of entry-level jobs in the public interest tax field. So the goal of the fellowship is really to create a space for people to start off in practicing public interest tax, to provide jobs for them sort of in that field, and also to provide training for them so that they can work with a host organization and someone at that host organization who maybe has been practicing for a while and can introduce them to the field and help them understand how to practice in this area. And so that's the general purpose of the fellowship. It's also to provide smart, excited, energized lawyers to low-income tax clinics that could use extra assistance for a period of time.
The other thing, Meg, about the program is the number of fellowship recipients who have remained with the host organization, who've been offered employment at the host organization, which has been really exciting to see, or who may have moved on to other LITCs or nonprofit organizations, and so have gotten trained as a low-income tax practitioner and then have remained active in this community. There have been others who may have moved on to firms, but who nevertheless have kept a foot in the door of the low-income tax practice world and done a lot of pro bono work. So I think you can see there's a ripple effect to each of these fellowships. That's been really exciting to see.
Absolutely, really good point. And so the fellowship is named after Christine Brunswick, who is a former director of the tax section and was really devoted to public interest tax work in general and pro bono work. She was really integral in the creation of this fellowship program, and she passed away, unfortunately, right at the start of it. And so they renamed it in her honor, which is really nice. And so that's why it's called the Christine Brunswick Public Service Fellowship. It is funded entirely from our what's called the Tax Assistance Public Service Endowment. Ty can talk a little bit more about how that works, but essentially donations to the endowment help keep it going, and the proceeds from the endowment fund the fellowship in its entirety. And so each year we are able to fund however many that the fund can support. So generally that's 2 public service fellows per class. So right now we've just started the process of looking for the class that will start in 2023, and they will be in their positions from 2023 to 2025. September 1st is the transition date. So September 21st or September 1st, 2023 to September 1st, 2025. And we anticipate having enough funds for 2 fellows, but we won't know for sure until we go through the application and selection process and talk to the finance committee and see where we are.
So Meg, let's talk a little bit about that, about the application process and what's involved in searching for a fellow and searching for a project, and then in obtaining funding. As I'm looking at some of the participants, potential host organizations, I see some who have been successful already in obtaining a fellow. So if you would like to chime in, that would be great. And I think that Terry and Nancy can talk a little bit further about this process of matching. You have this idea when you're in law school, you may have done a fellowship or a clerkship or an internship or something like that at an LITC, or become acquainted with an LITC. And so through them, this dialogue process starts of, well, what does a project look like? What am I particularly interested in? And I think the process of developing a project is really important for the applicant, but I think it's also important for the committee as we look at applications and think about, how tenable is this project? Does this seem like the right host organization? Does it seem like the right applicant? Does it seem like a project that's going to work, that the ABA could fund? And we have funded a variety of projects, some that are sort of local tax issues, some that are national tax issues, some that are sort of tax policy issues, some that are direct representation. So there's a range of issues that applicants can bring, and I think the real question is looking at how invested both the applicant and the host organization are in the project, and looking at the match of the skill sets to make sure that the project would come to fruition. So I don't know, Meg, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, as Susan alluded to, most of our fellows work at LITCs, and most of them represent clients as part of their fellowship. Not all do, but most. That is sort of fluid. What is required is that every fellow needs to do some sort of public interest tax related project during their 2 years. And they present progress on their project and then their final project to the committee to show that they're working on it and what kind of progress they've made. So that is a big part of what the selection committee looks at. One suggestion I believe we have on the website, if not, I'll make sure it gets on the website, prior projects that other fellows have done. Probably worth looking there, because some of them because the committee will say, well, we've kind of done this project a bunch of times, like independent contractors, we've done that project several times. So coming up with ideas that are slightly different or new is definitely something that the committee, I think, would find attractive. In terms of,
or even different parts of the country. So it may be that we've had, we've been trying to think about parts of the country which have been underrepresented by the fellowships. And so, that's another thing to think about is, what is your clientele? And how does the fellowship help reach that clientele?
Yeah, to that point, I think the committee does like to, have we already placed a fellow in this area recently? Have we placed a fellow at this exact organization previously? And when you look at the list, you'll see that we have placed fellows at the same organization more than once. And the reason for that is that, Grace, if it's not on the website, I will make sure it's added to the website. I have a list. I thought it was on the website. If it's not there, I will make sure it gets added.
But no, actually there is, you can look at the website's difficult to navigate, but I'll say that as with knowing that websites are hard to design, but you can look back and see there have been interviews like in the Tax Times and so forth with the fellows. And so there is a way to learn about the fellowships and the fellows themselves.
Yeah, we have a link. I will make sure we have a list of all the projects. I will make sure that it gets up there. Anyway, going back to geography, what's really important to the committee is that these are mostly lawyers that are really starting out in their career. So what's most important to the committee is that person is going to have the best chance to succeed. What our host organizations want, what our fellows want, and what the committee wants is positive experience and successful experience for everyone. We don't want our fellows to feel like they're not being supported, they don't have the supervision they need. You know, it can be really scary to be starting off in your legal career and feeling like you're just out there practicing tax law for the first time, sort of on your own. So our goal, one of our goals is to ensure that the organization has a plan for that fellow. They have a strong supervisor. They have a plan for where is that person going to work. And these days, maybe it's remote. But if this person's not going to be physically near their supervisor, how are they going to connect? How often are they going to connect? What are they going to do when they have a question? What other types of support are available in the organization for that fellow? These are things that weigh heavily on the committee because we want to make sure that we're not setting people up to feel like they're sort of just out there on their own. And that has happened, honestly. And our most successful fellows are the ones that are placed in strong organizations with strong supervisors. And you'll hear from Nancy a little bit more later about what that entails, but that's something that's really important. And the committee is more likely to place a fellow at an organization that they've already placed it at if that's the strongest place for that fellow to be. So we strive for geographic diversity, like to spread to fellows out geographically throughout the country, but it's really important that the fellows are supported. So that is part of this. So in terms of the application process, the applications are due in November. The committee will review the applications and select certain applicants for Zoom interviews with the full committee. So the person who's applied to be a fellow will sit in front of the whole committee and talk about their project, talk about why they want to do this, what their background is in tax law. And then the committee will also talk to all of the host organizations for those applicants. So if you here are going to apply for a fellow, we will reach out, and your fellow makes it to the final round. We will come and talk to you and ask you, what is your plan for supporting this person? So that's something to be prepared for as well. Susan.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. The other part of this too is that there is, tremendous support offered by the section for the fellows too. So, as Meg said, they're invited to present their projects to the committee itself, but that, we are interested in making sure that they succeed, that you succeed as a host organization, and that the fellow succeeds as a fellow. And so if there's a need for support or mentorship or something like that in the 2 years, we will certainly provide that as well. We're trying to be a bit more formal and set up, sort of ongoing dialogues with the host organizations. We have found that when we do have those dialogues, the experience is more successful for both the host organization and the fellow, him or herself. So I before turning it over to more speakers, I'm wondering if anybody in the audience, so, the potential host organizations, have any questions.
I will say that our next speaker is going to cover like some of the nitty-gritty logistics. So if you have like a very detailed question, probably hold it until Ty is able to speak. But if you have any broad questions, we can take those either now or later on.
I guess we answered all their questions. So one of the questions that I experienced when I was before I came to TAS, when I was still at Legal Aid, was how do I find a student or a potential applicant? And it was really, I mean, you can't really place an ad for, tax fellow being sought. And if you're not near a law school that has a tax clinic or a tax program or a place where people may have done an internship with you during law school, then, you're sort of in despair. One avenue, of course, is to post on the listserv. The other avenue is to work with your colleagues and see, particularly those in academic clinics, and see if they have students who look promising or interested, who are interested in thinking about a public service career, and see if they might be a good applicant as well, if only to have the conversation. And it helps, I think it helped us to have these conversations to figure out what we really wanted from the fellowship and whether it made sense for us.
If I could just throw something in there too, just to follow up on what Susan was saying. And so we do have, for those of you who aren't aware, this listserv for the Pro Bono and Tax Clinics Committee, which is what I think Susan was referring to as something as a place where you could post something saying you're interested. We also have a teaching tax committee. And so in my day job, I teach. And so we could always, for organizations that are interested, if you reach out to Meg and, let us know that you're looking for a fellow and you'd like to get the word out, we could always, I or somebody else in the teaching tax committee could also get the word out to tax academics that way to help spread the word more broadly. So it's not just going to the folks who are in LITCs, but going to, folks who are teaching tax as well.
That's a really good point. And
a great idea.
I'm here to have follow-up brainstorming conversations with anyone here who knows that they want to have a fellow but doesn't really know where to start to find one. So please reach out to me anytime. All right, I don't want to run out of time, so why don't we move on to Ty, who's going to talk more about how the logistics work on the host organization side.
Thank you, Meg. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. If you can't, let me know. I'm going to present from this aspect of you've gone through the application and your fellow was selected. Hooray! What happens next is, of course, you can imagine the ABA has a ton of forms. So we have a few forms that you'll have to fill out, including things like a W-9 and how you'd like to get paid. But in general, the fellow will be an employee of the host association. So the ABA and the ABA tax section, and more specifically the TAPS endowment, makes lump sum contributions to the association that is hosting. And those lump sums are quarterly, so 4 times a year. They can adjust based on various factors in terms of we fund the salary, which is pegged to a judicial clerk. Sometimes some folks ask, is it a tax court clerk? No, not specifically. It's a judicial clerk here in the DC area, so that's the salary. And then we cover benefits, which include medical, etc., which is why I say it can fluctuate. So when your fellow would start in September, if rates change in January, we can adjust the contribution amount. And then finally, the section and the endowment offers to support the student loan interest of a fellow. As we know, many law students come out of school with loans, and the endowment the fellowship would cover the student loan interest, not the actual payments on the student loan, but rather just the interest. In addition, the section encourages participation in our meetings. We invite the fellows to our 3-section meetings, which hopefully we're getting back in person. Terry, for example, got to come to the May meeting, but unfortunately during the pandemic, we did have a lot of virtual only meetings. But we do fund the fellows to come to the 3-section meetings. From that aspect, the section arranges all the travel and logistics. So we pay for the flight, the hotel, and reimburse for incidental travel costs, rather than having the host association make those arrangements. And in addition, if a fellow wanted to participate in any of our virtual offerings, all they need to do is reach out and we'd get them registered for items such as that. So overall, that's the highlights from my perspective. I'm happy to answer any nitty-gritty questions about how the contributions are made or what exactly it includes if anybody really needs any specifics. Feel free to come off mute or raise a hand. Anything you think I missed, Meg or Susan, in terms of specifics?
Looks like Grace has a question.
Grace Allison, please. You should be able to take yourself off mute. Go right ahead.
What is the judicial clerk salary?
Sure, it does fluctuate a little. In other words, it goes up every year. I don't have the rate for 2023, of course, yet, but right now for our incoming fellows, it's just about $57,000.
Thank you.
with inflation, I'm going to guess it's going to be more 58, 59 next year.
It's listed on the first page of the application as well. So I'll put that in the chat.
Hi, this is Tamara, and I was just going to share, although I wasn't a successful applicant back when I was a clinic director for the fellowship, god darn it, I will say that we actually did advertise. We advertised with the law schools that were local, and I think we actually also put something in like our monthly bar journal for the state. And we said we are interested in sponsoring a fellow under this program and providing information. And so we got, a good handful of candidates from doing that. So in addition to like the informal, like checking out with your, tax professors or clinical professors locally, that's how we approached it.
All right.
Great.
Well, I want to make sure
Thank
we
you.
have time. All right, Ty, are you good?
I'm great. I was going to turn it over to Nancy and Terry for some real life experience and to
Excellent.
give their feedback on how it went.
Great. Thank you, Ty. Thanks, everyone. I'm Nancy Rosner. I'm one of the senior attorneys with the Community Tax Law Project. We're located in Richmond, Virginia. And we had the opportunity to have Terry as an intern actually before she became a fellow. So we regularly interview with the local law schools for internship positions, both in the summer and throughout the year. And I'm not sure, Terry, exactly when you started, but
one L summer.
1L summer. Okay.
Yeah.
1L summer. And then you came back for a period of time as well?
Yeah, my second semester of a 3L year.
Yeah, which was great. So Terry had, she's had an internship with us. She actually then interned with the IRS, and we kept in touch, and she came back with us to intern again. And so we were able to really build a great relationship. And as the end of school coming, and I'll let Terry sort of share her perspective, but as the end of school was coming for her, we raised the idea of, well, would you be interested in staying on as a Brunswick fellow? So we were actually able to work together with her to come up with a project that she was interested in, that our organization wanted to support, which was the Fight Against Financial Abuse Initiative, which Terry can tell you a little bit about. But that worked out really well for us because we knew Terry, we knew she was a good fit in our office, and that we'd be able to provide strong supervision for her, because as you heard from Meg and Susan, it's really important for the host organization to be there for the fellow. They're not there to just be minding away on their own, in their separate office or working from home. We really saw our job as, sort of helping her grow as an attorney while also supporting our organization and fulfilling her project. But I definitely think that was an important part of it, is being there, being able to provide the guidance, being there, to support, and also to encourage her to take on new opportunities and new things. And when we applied to be a sponsoring organization, we also had a pretty set plan in place, which I like to think also helped us secure the fellowship. We had guidelines that we wanted to meet, regularly. We sort of planned out, that we would have, like, I think it was maybe quarterly meetings to talk about the progress of the fellowship, which included meeting with other organizations and trying to get clients, in that specific area of the law. And we had set goals as well. This is how many groups we hope to meet with by this point. This is how many, people we hope to contact, or outreach or education events we hope to do by this point. So I think that helped as well, having a set plan, that we could look to, both for us to see that we're meeting our goals and Terry was meeting her goals in the project, but then also for the committee to feel like there was a strong plan in place for the fellow coming in. So that's sort of a little bit about how we got Terry. Terry was our first fellow. We'd never had a fellow before. It worked out, but I don't think that you necessarily have to follow that route either. You know, I think we were fortunate to know Terry beforehand, but I definitely think it is possible to have a strong fellowship, not having met the fellow before. But I think being very clear about what the expectations are, what the project is, something that you're both interested in. And I think a big part of it is that there is a need for it in your community. So you have identified a need or a white space in your community, and the fellow would be able to provide a service that's needed there. So I will stop talking and turn it over to Terry to share a little bit from her perspective.
Oh, thanks, Nancy. So as Nancy said, my project focused on expanding the community tax law project's Fight Against Financial Abuse initiative. And this initiative was targeted towards helping domestic violence survivors gain basically access to justice with their tax issues. So a lot of people don't realize or think about, you know, like how does tax and domestic violence work? But, you know, some issues that these survivors were facing were things like their abuser improperly claiming their dependents, or their identities been stolen in order for tax returns to be filed in their name, or even if they were married, fraudulent joint returns. And the project ended up being very timely because of COVID and the stimulus payments that were coming out, and the credits, like the advanced child tax credit, 2021 credit specifically, are all very timely in that a lot of these survivors did not get access to those payments and credits, which really could have helped them in their, you know, in their journey to get away from their abuser and to get away from, you know, all of that, just get out of that situation. So a lot of my project focused on partnering with organizations to let them know what services we provide, specifically domestic violence organizations. And, you know, we were able to help a good amount of survivors gain access to their stimulus payments, you know, correct returns that might have been filed in their name. I was able to, even one of the survivors, I did have a tax court petition that I'm working on, I worked on, excuse me, helping a survivor with a tax court issue. And the fellowship overall, I mean, it's just such an incredible and valuable experience, because not only do you grow in your representation skills, learning more about substantive tax law procedures within the IRS, you know, you are growing as an attorney. And through this opportunity, I was able, you know, Nancy and David Sams, who's the executive director, you know, really pushed me into you know, getting out into the community, speaking at different community meetings and different organizational meetings. And the ABA, of course, has been really supportive in inviting me to meetings and been allowing me speaking opportunities. And outside of all that, you do have the LITC community, which is great, and everyone's, you know, really nice, and they all, you know, it's just wonderful to know that you do have a community of support, and that's helping you grow as a practitioner and just, you know, personally as an attorney. So I really found the experience just very, like I said, invaluable, and really a great way to set me up for my career.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nancy and Terry. Does anyone, I want to be mindful of time, and we did want to keep this brief, but I do want to take any questions that people have as we've gone on.
Hi, I have a question.
Oh.
So thanks, try to make it quick. I'm with the LITC in Albuquerque, New Mexico Legal Aid. And my concern that I want to ask about is it's difficult to recruit attorneys to begin with, let alone qualified and interested, in particular in the tax field, in particular just starting out. So what I wonder if you could address or speak to is, suppose we post a notice of a job opening, a potential job opening at the law school. We solicit applicants, but rather than this being a job that is available, it's kind of speculative. It's contingent on them completing this whole relatively extensive application process that is, you know, compared to some job opportunities. How do you suggest that we as a clinic, this is obviously a great opportunity for someone, but what can we do to, what would you suggest other than just going ahead with the process?
Susan, feels like you have thoughts.
Yeah, I agree with you that applying for this fellowship is a lot of work. On the other hand, the essays are brief, so you have to be succinct in your responses. So I think it's 500 words. Some people do more, some people do less. And I mean, nothing stops you from assisting the fellow, sort of shape their interest in their application. I mean, Terry and Nancy, maybe you could talk a little bit more about, did you find the application process onerous?
I'll just throw in one thing. I think our fellowship process is probably a lot less intense than some of the other big fellowships out there. So law students are not foreign to fellowships. Career offices are not foreign to the concept of fellowships. The career offices at the law schools know how to, advertise and explain them to students. And there really aren't a ton of entry-level jobs if you want to do public interest tax work. So, for something that you have a much higher likelihood of getting than some of the other fellowships, I think it's probably worth the effort. So I wouldn't say that it's a huge barrier, that the process is a huge barrier, but finding students that want to practice tax, that want to practice public interest tax, are willing to work for this particular, salary and in the geographical region that you need them, that I think that I do think that can be challenging.
I think one of the challenges too is that because of the timing of when the awards are made, like in January, this is Tamara. I think one of the challenges is if someone gets a offer in hand during the fall, then to wait it out till you get through the committee process and find out whether or not you've been hired or not might be a challenge, I would think, for some organizations. I know that I lost one of mine that was selected for an interview because she got an offer of a clerkship. So
we tried doing it earlier last year, and we found that if people get an offer for the IRS or what have you that they're really excited about, they're gonna take it no matter where they are in the process, even if they've already received an offer. So we've had people who we've given fellowship offers to, who've then gotten the IRS has then come through and they've decided to take that instead. So I think it can be, you want to find someone who's really committed to this particular opportunity.
I would like to add that I think it's important to build a good relationship with the pool that you're trying to choose from. So making sure that the tax, professors at the local law schools know you. Maybe you can come in and speak to their class about the fellowship, because I think the more a student, may feel comfortable, like, hey, I can see myself working with them, I can see myself working in that office, the more interested they're going to be and feel like it's a, not so scary to kind of put themselves out there for this job that they may or may not get. So I think the more you can kind of build that relationship may help as well.
Sounds like it'd be a good idea to reach out to the law school professors and try to identify if there's an applicant. Okay, so thank you very much.
Stephanie?
Is this a one shot? So is it when we submit an application, it's with student A and only student A? Or can you submit 2 applications with 2 students, or have a student as a backup, or is it just one shot, one student?
Well, that's a new question.
Well, not so new. I mean, we did have a situation where an applicant, there was an applicant, the applicant, I can't remember if the applicant was selected or advanced to the interview stage, and then the applicant took another job. So the host organization wanted to know if they could swap in a different individual, and the committee said no.
Well, okay, sorry. The committee said no. We never really got to the full merits of the case, because part of the reason that the committee said no is because this individual was clearly not. I mean, while we don't strictly define what a new lawyer is, this person was 20, 30 years into their like career. I mean, they were clearly not the target audience for the fellowship. So there were a couple of people saying you can't just swap people out, and there was someone else saying, but really it got removed more for the age reason. But I think it would be hard to submit 2 or 3 applicants for the same organization at the same time. I think that the committee would probably expect you, Stephanie, to screen the potential people that you found, pick the one that you would like best and that you think would be the best fit for your organization, and together put that person forward. Having other people that were interested that you ended up saying no to could end up like in Susan's situation. I mean, it's possible if the person said no that you might be able to try to put in a second person, but my guess is, and Stephanie, I have your information, I'll get back to you on that, but my guess is that the committee expects that the host organization has done the initial screening of potential fellows.
Thank you.
Grace sent me a question, which I will answer here for everyone. Lawyers who've been around for a while and are part of your pro bono panel who've been practicing for a long time would probably not be eligible. Age, this is not about age. If you graduate, it doesn't matter what your age is. If you graduated from law school 2 years ago, if you had another career and then you went to law school and then you graduated from law school and you're applying for this position, that's fine. That person would definitely be eligible. And we've had plenty of people like that. If you graduated when you were 22 and now you're 20, 30 years into your legal practice, the committee would not consider that person. Lawyers who have been practicing a long time in a different field and are switching over, I would think that probably the committee would want to see, like, did that person just get an LLM, in which case they would probably be eligible, or did they just do a tax clerkship or something like that? My guess is like a housing lawyer 30 years in that now wants to switch over to practicing tax. I'm thinking the committee probably would not look well on that. We haven't seen that before. Susan, I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
I was going to say,
Oh, go ahead, Tony.
Sorry, Tony.
no, so I was going to say that sounds a lot like our other new fellowship.
I was just going to say this.
It does. Yes. Our other fellowship is a much better fit for that. So we have another fellowship that we're just launching right now that's in partnership with Tax Analysts. Tax Analysts is funding that whole fellowship. We will only have one per year, but that one is for practicing attorneys, people who've been around for a while.
Seasoned, I think was the word we came up with.
Seasoned. There you go. Seasoned attorneys. And the first one we put at a specific LATC story that I will not get into right now, but for future we will recruit for the fellow for the Tax Analyst Fellowship that will start in 2023. We'll do that recruitment in the spring. And for that position, geographic diversity is like absolutely one of the top priorities. Places where it's really hard to find a pro bono panel, or it's really hard to find staff, or there's no ability to bring in new staff, people who don't need as much supervision, maybe don't have to have as much supervision. It's a different model. And Grace, your question about people from your pro bono panel that you'd like to bring on would fit much better for the other fellowship. Again, it's only one per year and it's very new. This will be our second fellow we'll be recruiting in the spring. So I'll send all that information out to this whole group, everyone who came here today. I'll make sure you get the announcement for that fellowship as well in the spring. I don't want to keep people, but we're happy to answer questions. So if people want to stay and ask questions, please do. These are good ones. Some of these I hadn't expected or heard before. And the other thing is we do have some students who signed up, or potential applicants who've signed up for our applicant information session. And if any of them say they're looking for host organizations, I'm happy to send them your information. If you're looking for a fellow again, hopefully people should be able to find my email, but let me put it in the chat. Please reach out to me anytime. I'm happy to play matchmaker. And sometimes I get people on both sides reaching out to me. So,
and if you already have someone in mind, you can suggest to them to attend the webinar this afternoon or to watch the recording.
Yeah. And obviously to submit their application. If you're working with someone and they have questions about the application process, they can reach out to me with questions as well. I'm happy to answer them. One thing that we didn't mention earlier that I'll just throw out before we close is we've referred to the committee a bunch of times, but I'm not sure that we really explained that. So there's a selection committee that's made up of members of the tax section. Some people have permanent positions on the committee, like Tony's position, who's the vice chair for pro bono. He's always like that person, not he, but that person is always on the committee. The chair of our pro bono and tax clinics committee is always on that committee, but then the other members rotate and they have terms, several year terms, and they rotate. They're selected usually because they've done some pro bono work or have some interest or connection with it. Lots of folks that work at LITCs are on the committees. So it's a good mix of people who are really in it from the LITC world, and then some folks that maybe have hosted fellows before. We have former fellows on the committee, on the selection committee as well. And so that committee reviews all the written application, interviews the candidates, and then ultimately votes on who will receive offers. So it's not any one person that is in charge of making those decisions. It's the committee, the committee vote that determines, and basically they rank the finalists, and then we determine how many we can offer. And usually the top 2 get offers. And then if they don't accept them, we'll move down the list usually. That's usually how it works. But if you're interested in who's on that committee, or that's something that's interesting to you, I think we can be transparent about that. I don't think it's a secret. I'm happy to share the names of the members of the committee as well. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, I saw one in the chat. Oh, that was just you, Stephanie. Okay, great. I'll follow up with you, Stephanie. Okay. But thank you to everyone who came today, and please let us know if you have any other questions, and thank you for your interest in the fellowship. Have a great day, everyone.